Okay, so welcome to the fourth panel plenary session of the conference. My name is Kaarina Aitamurto and I have the pleasure and honor to act as a chair for the lecture Experts and Schmexperts, Russian Academia in the States War on Extremism by Professor Dmitry Dubrovsky. Professor Dubrovsky is a Russian historian and a sociologist. He is a lecturer in the Boris Nemtsov Russian Studies program at the Charles University Prague, and also a professor at the Free University Riga. Since the early 2000s, Professor Dubrovsky has served as an expert witness in cases involving charges of incitement of hatred or extremism, including such cases as, for example, against the art group Vaina, the religious organization Hizb ut-Tahrir, National Bolshevik Party, and also various Russian neo-Nazis. In 2015, he founded the Amicus Curiae project, which brings together an independent network of experts and conducts research on the court-ordered special forensics examinations. He was a co-author of the first publication in Russia dedicated to the hate speech in Russian internet. He has published several articles on the distinctive Russian practices of special judicial expertise, particularly in the cases involving religious minorities and allegations of ethnic and racial hatred, as well as hate crimes against the LGBTQ. Currently, he is completing a monograph summarizing the history and practice of special forensic examinations in Russia. Since 2020, Professor Dubrovsky has also been involved in a research project on academic rights and freedoms in Russia at CISRUS, which includes maintaining the Gaudeamus blog on this topic. He has published numerous articles and reports on the state of academic freedom in Russia, Russian higher education, and after the beginning of the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine, Professor Dubrovsky left Russia. In April 2022, he was designated as so-called foreign agent by the Russian authorities, but also in June 2025, Professor Dubrovsky was elected as the first chair of the European Committee of the Russian-American Science Association. So please join me to give a warm welcome to Professor Dubrovsky.
Thank you very much, and that's my pleasure and my privilege to speak in this room, especially because that is recalling my memory about being here as the fellow of the Kone Foundation, Kone Fellowship in the Helsinki Collegium 5 years ago. And that is, again, so it was my privilege to speak. And to speak about the topic I probably dedicated 20 years of my life. And the story I try to tell you is the really picture story. It's not only because the war started, and not only the aggression against the independent sovereign country happened from the country which happened to be my homeland. At the same time, this is the picture story because what we are currently facing the crash of the institute, the substantial amount of human rights activists I will tell you a little bit about today. They contributed to the creation of this institute. They contributed to the fighting against the extremism. And at the very end, this institute had been raided by the Russian state, and its intention and its direction was fully reversed to violate the rights of the people and to punish the political opponents. That is the one story. And second story I'll tell you today is just how the Russian academia split it, politically and professionally, since the 90s, and how this split affected the very small, very particular institute of the special as I call it, special humanitarian expertise within the Russian litigation. And this is also my personal transformation, because that is the 2007, this is one of the first my participation as a, even not an expert, so I was public defender in the art group Vaina, when this is the Oleg Vorotnikov in the, beyond the bar. And this is for the first time I met the very interesting definition of what is social group, because that is for the first time I met this definition of social group as extremism means to violate the rights of very special, vulnerable social group as the Russian militia. And that is my first contribution was made to discuss what perspective this could be considered as a social group, especially vulnerable. And that is the academic scholarship I became, the scholar of this institute I became after the situation when the Russian authorities stopped to communicate and stopped to collaborate with the experts like me already after the Crimea annexation in 2014-2015. And because of the Kona Foundation, because of the National Endowment for Democracy, because of the Kennan Institute, I became the person who studied this institute rather than participating in the expertise production. And the Soviet Union had this institute. I mean, everybody knows the psychiatrical expertise is very well investigated, but at the same time, the Siniavsky-Daniel trial, which is the very famous case against the Russian writers, and that is one of the first cases when the Soviet academia participated in a very shameful way. They participated, one of the leading Soviet philologists, linguist, Vinogradov, he signed the collective expertise against these human rights activists, human rights writers. But that's what's especially interesting in this case. It was one of the first cases of such kind of very special linguistic expertise against their Soviet descents. They were asked not about their anti-Soviet statement. They were asked about who did these novels. I mean, because the first accusation was, as you probably remember in this case, how these people, whether these people really produced these novels. But the paradox was they never denied. And therefore, it's interesting, as you can see this, the quotation, that is instead of the identification who is the author of this text, these the scholars provide a scholarly verified knowledge about the anti-Soviet statement in the novels of the Siniavsky-Daniel. So that was one of the first examples how the Soviet academia contributed into the anti-Soviet anti-Soviet statement litigation. And I have found more, but I just to reduce the number of these, I can tell you that is a lot of different such kind of expertise on religious, especially in religious, against religious groups, and the numerous such kind of expertise I have found when it comes to the cases of another Soviet descent. And therefore, Soviet legacy was, there was scientific ideological expert analysis. This was a very strange combination of ideologically based and ideologically motivated expert opinions provided for the court. And the scholars, they became the kind of ideological censors and even judges, because sometimes the court, they just copying the decisions or the opinions of the scholars and move it into the final statements. What is important, what they did, they expertised the text. So this is the text was under consideration. They never considered nothing but text. Some questions still remain for me. They appeared occasionally, not on all the cases. Sometimes they are very specific expert. I'm personally trying to find the expert which is the expert in the dozen of cases against religious minorities, but I cannot find his biography. It's good like a secret expert of the Soviet time. This expertise was strongly affiliated, the experts of these cases had been strongly affiliated with the ideological centers, of course based on Marxism, Leninism, scientific atheism, and all the time, when they are looking into that, who were the experts, these experts being always, they've been representative of the Soviet Academy of Science. They were academics. within the Soviet system. After the collapse of Soviet Union, this situation was seriously affected, the situation in the post-Soviet science, seriously affected the split, as the Sokolov-Titayev described it, as the splitting between the provincial and native science. The provincial, that is the science which has been involved in the global academic dialogue, while the native science is the isolated and ideologically conservative. And the Russian implication of this splitting is very particular, because in Russia, this political separation more or less equal to the pro-Western liberals as provincial and the pro-Russian state conservative, if not nationalist, as a native. And the problem is we can see, and all the time we are starting with the looking into the cases, into the litigation of these cases. We are always looking at the very strange representation of these political forces for the both sides of the legal dispute around the numerous cases within the already new Russian criminal code. First and foremost, it was around hate speech, mostly anti-Semitic discussions and the anti-Semitic statements in the 90s. Art, on the later stage, when it comes already the early Putin time, political art, political performances, and of course religious minorities, Jehovah's Witnesses, Church of Scientology, and others. And all the time we can trace the experts for the both sides, all the experts affiliated with the, let's say, liberal forces or liberal circles of the Russian academia, and vice versa, conservative. And this is very, very briefly about what kind of this diversity of the cases when the Russian law requires the special expertise in the trial. Starting with the history, that is the so-called the rehabilitation of Nazism case, the criminal article. Political science sociology requires when we are looking on the cases of the extremist organization or even foreign agent. Foreign agent requires, at the time it was actively disputed in the court, foreign agent legislation addressed to the political scientist. And this is I participated in only one case when in the court we disputed whether the report to the United Nations whether it's politics or not. That's with the political scientist from the other side of the story, from the accusations and from the prosecutor side, who represented the educational institution, Herzen University of Pedagogic in St. Petersburg. Religious studies and art had been actively disputed when it comes to the Article 148. That's the kind of violation of religious feelings that most broadly the Russian litigation used linguistics. Linguistics, or sometimes it's called the linguistics and psycholinguistics, which is very interesting development. But it's always because of it's very actively involved exactly linguists in these processes. They become the strange combination of the linguist and psychologist in these cases. Don't ask me what exactly could psychologists do with the text. Again, we are always addressing to the analysis of the text, but still we are always have this very strange combination of the linguist and psychological analysis of the text. And if we take on let's say, the periodization as I can see it, so that is quite visible. When in the 90s, at the beginning of the construction of these institutions, the Democrats prevailed. They were allied with the state. They tried to actively establish the Institute of Protection of the different minorities against the attack from the nationalists, xenophobe, anti-Semites. And that was very visible in the cases on the religious or hate speech or anti-Semitism. When starting with the second term of Putin already, this was the kind of important limit. There was slowly these institutions created by the civil society being institutionalized. The institutions like Gladys, like the Gerenka Group, like even the state Russian Federal Center for the special expertise being established to provide this expertise from both sides of the story, from the state side, from the civil society side. And during this time, it was slowly, the narrowing of the space for the independent, especially independent academic expertise. And after 2014, conservative scholars increasingly dominated this forensic expertise. They become more and more rated with the support of the state. And as I can show you right now, this institution, which been created in the 90s by the democratic forces, been captured right now by the conservative forces and led by the state, and now it's mostly using against the political opposition, against the civil rights activists, against the artists. And this is my personal story, and because the Nikolai Mikhailovich Gerenko was killed in 2004, June 19, by the two neo-Nazis, both of them just turned 16, in his home in St. Petersburg. He originally he was a doctor of science, he made African studies, but he was very seriously contributed in the development of this expertise in St. Petersburg, and he made a first recommendation for the special expertise of 2002. It was the older colleague of mine, and that was my personal Stolpenstein in a certain way, because he was killed by neo-Nazis, and that's the group I joined later. They become they need to continue his work. And since this time, exactly, I started to be invited as an expert, and we started to try to continue his work and transform his legacy into the real cases in the Russian litigation trial. And one of the cases Gerenko started but never ended, it was just a good explanation how it works at the beginning. It was the Konstantin Dushenov trial. Konstantin Dushenov was a remarkable person. He was hero of Russian Federation, commander of the submarine, who converted into the Orthodoxy, become the most anti-Semitic, I would say, Judophobic person in the Orthodox scene of beginning of 2000. He published the newspaper Rus Pravoslavnaya, so Orthodox Rus. So what was remarkable in this text, I was once asked to analyze the issue of this newspaper. It was interesting. It was 15 different articles in this newspaper, but 14 of them were dedicated to the different aspects of the Jewish conspiracy against the Russian Orthodoxy. And that is the interesting, how we could defend this person easily. That is the list of the experts who provided the expertise from defense side, explaining, for example, the word Yid is used in these numerous anti-Semitic texts under consideration, is just commonly accepted in Orthodoxy, is a characteristic of religious extremists. They're not us extremists, they are extremists, right? And fanatics, Satanists, and haters of Christ, who actually profess the racist anti-Christian tenets of the Talmud. So that since the beginning, extremists, they were not us. The extremists, they were. And that is already at that time, one of the members of Gerenko group, Gerenko was already killed at the moment, although he started this case. Irina Levitina, who unfortunately passed away last year, also she participated in the case, providing her expertise in this case, explaining to the court that Žid cannot be considered as a religious term, which is the biggest problem since the beginning, was the condition of the scientific discussion being proposed by that matter. I mean, seriously, how we could discuss whether Žid is offensive or not offensive. This by default, this is a slur. But still, we all the time, at the moment, we have to prove it for the trial. And this is the Konstantin Dushenov. The another case is just, the two different exhibitions by the Sakharov Center, Be Aware Religion, or lately Forbidden Art trials. And this is another examples when the expert demonstrated their conservative or if not religious affiliation as a scientific methods of research. The Ksenia Tsekhanovskaya, art historian from Moscow, was invited to provide her expertise about the cases. The cases were strictly provocative indeed, because that is the Be Aware Religion. It was the different art, modern art provocation about the Christianity or about religion in general. And Tsekhanovskaya explained the essence of the exhibition, Be Aware Religion, lies in discrediting Christianity through the system of deliberated actions, specifically through demonstrative desecration, a distortion of easily recognized Christian symbol. That is the blasphemy. So that's the censor become, the art historian become the censor who identified the blasphemy in the case, although at that time it wasn't such legislation in Russia. And again, so here another art historian in this case tried to protect the accused organizers, but they failed, and unfortunately in both cases the organizers were pleaded guilty and they paid serious fine. And this is more or less one of the examples of such kind of exhibition. And sometimes the cases of resistance were successful. The Camera of State University, this camera was the attempt to declare the Bhagavad Gita, the very important religious book for the Krishnaite, as an extremist because there several experts, including Doctor of Philology Mihaela Sachi, who is currently, by the way, based in Portugal, Sergei Dranishnikov and Alexei Gorbatov as religious studies, they found extremism. And what they have found extremism? Propaganda of intellectual and social inferiority of the person on the basis of his or her attitudes to religious values justified by Bhagavad Gita. Meaning, to simplify the story, every religious system declared the exclusivity of its members. That's absolutely by default. That is the core of religious affiliation. But nevertheless, the experts, take a look there, some of them they're linguistics, some of them religious scholars, and they declared seriously in the text. So that is the sign of the extremism, because these people somehow declare that who believe in our religion, they are, I mean, actually good people, but the rest of the bad people. So that is, and that is another religious studies scholar. They try to provide the protection after the scandal, mostly because of the direct involvement of Indian ambassador in Russia Federation. This case was revoked by the prosecutor office, but it's just one of the good examples how the religious studies scholars could seriously discuss the religious exclusivity. It could be the sign of extremism. And of course, the Pussy Riot case. Well, this is I'm jumping from the one period to another just to demonstrate to you how the Pussy Riot case. And here is the several, established scholars like Vsevolod Troitsky, Institute of Psychology, Igor Pomkin, Professor of Law, Moscow State Law University, and the member of Russia Academy of Science, psychologist. They stated about the role of, all of you, I believe, remember what is the Pussy Riot was. So what is it was more or less the short movies made by the presentation of the art performance made in the Church of the Christ the Savior, and that is act is aimed at brutal abuse and sophisticated derogatory mockery of the social group of Orthodox believers. And again, so that's where, and this is one of the key story, that all the criticism, all the play with the different sacral objects from the perspective of these people, from the perspective of experts, should be identified as extremism. So the extremism becoming very useful when it comes to the definition of social group. And I didn't get it. I didn't put it into the slides, but I remember my personal success story when it was 2012 in St. Petersburg. The prosecutor office addressed to the court asking to ban the books of the Church of Scientology. The Church of Scientology existed in Russia since the 1990s, and there is the interesting case was because their prosecutor office have found the numerous of publications against psychiatry. They are anti-psychiatrists, and the psychiatrists addressed to the court claiming their rights had been humiliated by the publication about the negative aspects of psychiatry, including the publication about the Soviet repressive psychiatry in the Soviet time. And the prosecutor office seriously addressed to the court supporting this claim and trying to justify that the social group psychiatrists had been insulted by the publication of this Church of Scientology. But it was successfully overruled. But the Church of Scientology was under the investigation 2017, and this is another interesting scholar, religious scholar Larissa Astachova, who identify now it's not psychiatrists, now there's another very, very vulnerable social group called troublemakers. If you think this group doesn't exist, you're wrong. The Dr. Nauk proved it existed because within the religious teaching of the Ron Hubbard troublemakers, that is actually the sinners, of somebody who should be excommunicated. And the Larissa Astachova, again, says doctor and professor. And currently, the doctor and professor, chair of the Department of Theology in the Moscow State Linguistic University, she proved, she delivered the 300 pages expertise to the court, explaining so the social group of troublemakers do exist, and not enough they do exist, but the Church of Scientology severely violated their rights, insulted and humiliated troublemakers. But how they did it, that's important, how they did it. They published the list of troublemakers on the church, near the entrance of the church. You know, these so publicly humiliated people there, these groups should be protected by Russian state, right? And that would be funny, but these people were pleaded guilty. I mean, they received a serious sentence. And that is how the religious scholar directly, she is involved in numerous other cases, but this is how the situation looks right now. That you can prove, that you can try to deliver all the possible, the absurd to the court. But if you have the list of the official academic affiliation, the court will accept everything you will write. And this is another impressive, this is already about the political performance, Putin effigy. That is you can see this, the title is the military criminal Punya, meaning Putin Veve. And this is another story when the group of activists, they, let's say, publicly executed this mannequin, and the prosecutor addressed to the court, and the court established a serious problem because they're allegedly from again, so this is the prominent and very famous linguist, Professor Dr. Valery Mishlanov and the Professor Dr. Svetlana Zhdanova and another lawyer from this university. They have found the serious problem with the minors, women and older adults who could be the targets of psychological damage because of their could observe. Again, if we would read it outside of the court litigation, it would be funny or absurd. I mean, but that is the result. This is been the part of the case, and the people again pleaded guilty because of these texts being delivered to the court. And again, so this is already the situation when the state already moving not only to protect the conservative or traditional values, but also this is the situation when their state is already moving to protect the state itself as in any attempt to do something against the state, it's considered as extremism. So this is one of and that is already one of the latest situations when the Berkovich and Petrichuk trial 2024, which was itself a fantastic story. This is the expert Roman Silantev, one of the author of the so-called destructology. Well, again, don't ask me what is it. So even the Ministry of Justice delivered a special letter to the trial explaining there is no such discipline exist. But that didn't bother court at all, because this is the doctor professor delivered the scientific opinion. This is scientific, so there's no need to have any doubts. And this is very interesting to see what exactly. This is the theater play. The thing is just in so-called, the thing is the Bright Falcon. This is just to know the story of how the Russian women dreaming about their ideal partner. They look into the Muslim radicals, they sometimes marry them, and they try to then escape from this marriage. And this is the tragedy, actually. This is a drama. And this is a drama based on the idea of how to prevent the other women to follow this path. But instead of this, these experts, they explain these theater play aimed to destabilize government bodies and Russian Federation, disseminating the ISIS ideology. And also what is especially interesting, speaking about extremism, currently Russia is considering radical feminism as extremism. And as was clearly stated, they're on the same basic idea of humiliation as, as a Muslim radicalism, is built the ideology of radical feminism, which is also present in these materials. So somehow the radical feminism together with radical Islam, they couldn't coincide in the one text, but it's, again, so nobody bothered, so there is no logic applied. But as you know, that's all of them, they've been jailed. And this is Roman Silanti, but again, so this is currently this native science. This is the science which always become oppressed by the, let's say, the international standards. They currently have no restrictions. They have everything in their hands, because right now the conservative forces, allied with the native science, they can produce their knowledge as a scientifically approved, because there is no Western, limitation or obstacles or constraints applied to this science. And let me try to finalize this to what is with this institution happen. At the beginning, it was collaboration. It was the collaboration of democratic forces, democratically oriented scholars who supported, who contributed, who strengthened the Institute of Special Expertise, delivering their opinions, working together with the states, creating methods of this investigation. This was the very active cooptation. Some of the academics or they become experts, and at the very end, it's been raided. It's not enough to say that currently the state controls these institutions. Currently, the state created these institutions. They adopted their experts for these cases. And of course, it's epistemic substitution, because their scholarly expertise been replaced by the native science, pseudo-expertise legitimizing political narrative. And my favorite, sometimes the expert, they could tell for themselves. And one of the experts from the St. Petersburg had been involved in numerous cases, for example, justifying the criticism to police forces, that is the violation of or the humiliation of the rights of the police forces as a social group. Professor Misonjnikov, for example, stated that liberals use discursive weapons and NLP as a tool of liberal anti-Russian, anti-state propaganda. Just imagine they consider this as a scientific opinion. Again, as a doctor, professor of the St. Petersburg State University, who have been invited in numerous cases as an expert to deliver his scientific opinion to the court. What is currently, well, I skipped the part of what's happened after 2022, because in 2023, de facto academics stopped to be the experts, because the state already mostly addressing to the state-affiliated experts from the law enforcement bodies, but still the experts, they become a censor. So the academics started to produce knowledge which directly contributed into the indictment of the political opponents and civil rights activists. And sometimes in most of the cases I know, the results of their scientific opinion had been directly copy and paste into the final indictment. And this is the consequences. What we are considering within this is not only the victory of native science, it's the victory of conservative forces allied with native science, and that means the crash of the professional standards and academic integrity. It is paradox I have found in the numerous occasions when the people easily, the currently approved expert, they are using plagiarism. They are just easily stealing the different from the scientific publications. They stealing the text and just put it into the expertise as it could be their own. And of course, that's violation of academic freedom, because the state consistently started to pressure independent experts who remain in the country. Or if you're providing the alternative opinion, you could easily lose your job. How it happened with Alexander Panchenko when he delivered the alternative opinion several years ago about particular case of religious minorities in St. Petersburg, which contradicted the official expertise delivered by the state university, and he immediately lost the job. And that is the criminalization of cultural and intellectual dissent. So there's currently the academia have been involved into the very open process of the criminalization of the dissent. So this is not enough to say that is the general attack against political opposition and civil rights activists. This attack against independent thoughts. And of course, that seriously eroded the trust to the scientific institutions, because the scientific institutions right now, they are delivering literally what exactly the prosecutor office wants. And the general conclusion is just imagine the war somehow, or Putin disappeared, that the war stopped. And what we are speaking about the Russian academia, what we envisage is the terms of their future. Whether we can reclaim the idea of forensic expertise as a space of intellectual integrity, but not political loyalty. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dmitry. And now it's time for questions, but actually there are 3 places in the front row, so please come and sit here. Maybe we can collect like 3 questions, and please, when you present your question, tell us your name and affiliation. And the first question, I think, is over here.
Thanks. Hi, thank you. That was fascinating, a fascinating account of the Schmexperts, as you eloquently put it. So, when you said that after 2022 it even deteriorated and the scholars were stopped being used even as a cover-up for the Schmexperts, so it makes me think of the particular case that I study, which is, as you know, the prosecution of Jehovah's Witnesses. So what I clearly see in all the process of prosecuting them, at every stage the due process just doesn't matter that much. So when the law enforcement plants evidence or puts their people in the kingdom halls at the meetings, they don't even bother to dress them properly, because Jehovah's Witnesses dress differently, and they don't bother, planting evidence properly because they do it under CCTV cameras. Then the experts don't bother to produce any consistent narrative, any coherent text, because why bother? The decision has been already made before. And the same with the judicial system. Everybody knows what the decision is going to be, but the due process is more like performative. So the question is, to what extent should we take all these Schmexperts seriously at all? Like analyze the text and so on. Thank you.
Thank you. The first question. And the second one is here. And please tell us your name and affiliation.
Yeah, Christina Kowalska, Université Paris 8, France. Thank you a lot, Dmitry. You showed us very well that actually these experts and expertises are they are arranged often to correspond to the needed result. So my question is, what do you think, why do these states need this expertise? Because, to what extent this state will need to justify the decisions? Because actually these decisions could have been made without any justification.
Back there, the third question.
Thank you. Aim Nalewi, University of Oxford. I hate saying that. Спасибо большое. Это очень интересная история. The question I had was, to what extent do you think that Russia having a civil legal system based on judges and experts assessing the codes and the laws in comparison to a common legal system where we have juries essentially helps shape this environment that's hostile to dissent? Or do you think there is actually no legal system at all and this is all just theatre and the play is called Kafka's The Trial?
Yeah, thank you. It looks like it was just one question. First and foremost, I do think, well, I truly believe that the current regime is very much legalist. They're really legalist. They very much believe in the legal documents. As I can see, that's in the they are very much care about what should be in the case. In the case should be properly organized and listed, organized properly and properly written documents. That is how the judge work. I mean, I cannot call it neither the common or the civil law, because it's not a law. It's the legal theater. But in legal theater, they have a very specially assigned position or character. An expert is one of the assigned character in this theater. That is why I do not believe that we can improve it. That's for the future. We should be totally, deconstructing it and assemble it since the beginning. That's one. The second, by the way, speaking about legitimacy of this decision, just don't forget, if you're somebody who decided right now to look the, let's say, refugee, being accused in the extremism in Russia, I don't think that most of the countries would accept your application because you've been accused in extremism. And most of the people will never consider, most of the legal system wouldn't consider your protests against that was unfair or there's just a very broad understanding of extremism. And this is how Russia is normally applying to the use, for example, Interpol, to punish those who somehow been accused of extremism. And this is the problem, because the extremism is more or less part of European system. That's even all the bureaucrats, all the migration service, everybody who have seen it in the list, that's people accused in extremism. No. We will never consider any application for the refugee or the special status, right? So it works. I mean, that's nobody interested in the legitimization of these decisions inside the country. It's everybody understood. Of course, that would be easily, but it's on the screen. It was the competitive process, the experts were being invited, and you've been pleaded guilty, and you're extremist. End of the story. And they try to now convince the other European or non-European countries, all the United States right now, that wasn't the case, and you're not guilty, right? So I believe that is still working. The extremism is very actively used against the civil rights activists, against the political opponents, which become them very much trapped inside the Russian Federation. And this is the question, by the way, which is never, until now, it's not seriously discussed or resolved even.
Thank you very much for a very interesting lecture. My name is Vera Tolz. I'm from the University of Manchester. It actually so happens that I know the experts who testified on the right side, so to speak, and you mentioned Irina Levinsky a couple of times and Alexander Panchenko. And the kind of Irina Levinsky's side of the story was that she absolutely hated the experts whose activities you described, and kind of has been saying that really these are the people who should be put on trial. But her argument was, and that was absent from your story, that this now providing this expertise is a very lucrative business, and that's why she always refused to take any money. And her view was some of these people are doing this work not for ideological reasons, not because they're kind of patriots, pro-Putin. They're very well paid. And she found it actually particularly moral. But yeah, if you can comment on this financial side of this story, which I think is very much part of the current Russian political system and kind of social interactions, which we need to take into account to analyze how sort of Putin's Russia works.
Two more questions right here.
Thank you. Julie Wilhelmsen, Norwegian Institute of International Affairs. I've been working on the North Caucasus, and I'm wondering, with your insight on the institutional terrain in Russia and the general politicization of this entire sector. For colleagues who are still in Russia and who still want to do proper research, are there any institutions where it's more possible to continue doing such work, or is it difficult everywhere now? Thank you.
Hello, Guy Flicker, University of Oslo. Thank you for an excellent presentation, Dmitry. I was wondering about this epistemic substitution from a different case study that I did on the so-called observer commissions of, democratic activists actually going into the prisons in order to see how prisoners actually were treated in the prisons. It seems like there was a kind of a substitution going on there as well to the observer commissions, like in the 2014, 2015. So again, I really appreciate your sense of detail and experience detail. But again, if we are to do this on a more comparative basis to see how that actually works in terms of changing it from the regime from inside, are we really seeing something that is, profoundly changing the understanding of how law is practiced in Russia today? I think that's my question.
Yeah, thank you. When it comes to financial side, that's interesting. I deliberately removed this part because most of the Schmexperts we dealt with, they were paradoxically from non-governmental organizations, like the famous expert Kryukova, who that's very well known because he's absent of any education, but the candidate of pedagogical science and no scientific publication at all. Absolutely. She has no affiliation with any academic institutions for the whole time, but with the one exception, Institute of Cultural Studies in the beginning of, in late of 90s. But she is one of the leading experts in Russia. She, for example, by her education, by her opinion, the Jehovah's Witnesses was closed because she provided this expertise about claiming the translation of the Bible provided by Jehovah's Witnesses is the extremist translation. The person, again, without any education in religious studies and any education besides, again, the pedagogic 40 years ago. I mean, it's mind-blowing, but it's how the Russian system works, because it's enough. And when the people asking how it's possible this person could be, and that was exactly the business. This is exactly the business because I dealt with her text several times. And that is the fabrics of the production. And when I read the particular opinion of her so-called institution, it was the NGO, Institute of Social-Cultural Expertise, somehow I found within the one text of the expertise, the part of another expertise about the pornography. But nobody cares because, I mean, just a technical issue. Nobody cares. And this is why, when it comes to academia, it's much more interesting. Most of the academics on the prosecutor side, they never been paid. They have this assignment from the authority of the institute, like St. Petersburg State University or the other institutions, and they considered either the part of their regular work or even as a special burden without being paid. And sometimes they even claim, oh, that is so difficult, we have never been paid for that, but I should, because that's my authority asked me to do so. So this is very interesting. So it's clearly business outside of academia, but within the academia, this is the practice. Well, my own experience when I used to work for the Russian Museum of Ethnography, delivering such expertise, the court never paid it, although they should, but they never. About the institutions, that's interesting. Well, because I am currently working with exploring the general situation, conditions of the living and working in Russian academia, it's still a lot of the safe spaces within. It's very much reminds us the Soviet Union, when the people could find a place, for example, outside of the Moscow and St. Petersburg, sometimes in the regions, But there's a different regions, and Caucasus is not very good region. So there's a better way to escape the Northern Caucasus as a subject of investigation, as especially the place for the work. And moving to more theoretical or more historical stories, which is not very bothering by the regime, because the regime is concentrated on the restricted amount of the stories, which is interesting. I mean, history of the 20th century, of the gender studies, of the human rights. That is totally under control, and the scholars being persecuted and the pressured and so. But when it comes to, let's say, semiotics, you're free to go. I mean, nobody cares. And of course, when it comes to the Northern Caucasus, that is the very particular story. That is, I remember it's already 10 years when I tried myself, because I'm not very special in the Islamic studies. Because I was invited to provide my expertise in the Hizb ut-Tahrir because only me, I'm sorry, dared to do so. The rest of the scholars, I tried to ask them, including the people I know quite well, and they responded to me, no, that is the next step will be that I'll be immediately visited by the FSB, and I should find not only the new work position, but only a new country to live in. So that was already happened 10 years ago. So that's even before the war. About the substitution, you're fully right. That is the general transformation, how this regime is working. It's not necessarily to raid the institute. That is enough to change the content, to fulfill it. I mean, this is the observation committee. They did it the same. They just removing all the human rights activists from these institutions and pack it by the veterans of the penitentiary system as a kind of main expert in the penitentiary system of the rights of the prisoners. And the same story here. So that is currently most of these native experts, they become the expert of the investigation committee, they become the expert Ministry of Justice, they become the expert of Ministry of Interior. That is how these methods and people, they are duplicating, they are disseminating, let's say, the good practice from the system of education, and the former leader of the, let's say, methods of the investigation of the forensic expertise in Russian linguist, Galashina, who is the last year blamed me and my colleagues as the Soros-baked betrayal of the Russia, of course. And that is the very visible how she, responding to the criticism I provided in the Amicus Curiae website, and she responded, that is how we should protect our country against all these, toxic critics from the West. So this is they changing the institute, and they raided this institute, and they changing the content of this institute differently. Yes.
The next one, we have the first one over there.
Daniel Zajvaranek, Tampere University. Thank you so much for your interesting presentation. I have one thought about this presentation, because in the beginning you divided Russian science into these two broad categories of native science and international liberal science. And I was thinking about these cases of, for example, scientists and experts employed by these think tanks who were denying the cancerogenic nature of tobacco smoking in the 60s. Or, for example, the experts who are denying the climate change right now. And all these experts, they produce kind of this social ignorance about the things which are agreed on within the scientist community. And my question is, do you think these two phenomena are comparable? And if they are, what kind of perspective it opens up on on the nature of this Russian expert communities and the work and the expertise they provide for the court cases? Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have a second question for this round? Over there. We have here one question.
Thank you. So my second question is about, have you thought to compare this expert and expertise with the denunciation? Because it seems that sometimes some similar features.
Answers to these two.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. That is, the difference is the following. The problem with native science is that we can criticize the people who are, let's say, deny the climate change, right? But they're using, at least, they try to refer the same system of their denomination, right? So they are using the same methods. They try to analyze or criticize the result based on their universally accepted principles and methods. The difference between the provincial and native science try to explain, try to create its own system of knowledge, independent from the provincial. So this idea is like a destructology. That is very much, by the way, the characteristic of the, let's say, the native science. I mean, I remember this 20 years ago, it was tolerantology in Russia. It's a science about tolerance. I mean, the Roman Silaitiev proposed to, for example, to create its own dissentology, study about, I mean, this discipline about the dissents as a allegedly, let's say, toxic problem for the regime. So this is, in this regard, they, paradoxically, those who deny the climate change, for example, we could dispute with them, but we're using the same system of the knowledge. While when we cannot discuss. Another example of this native science is the new direction of the Russian history and to declare that Russia is state civilization. I mean, despite of all the pretty archaic, but in the same time, paradoxically, it's still, it's very archaic, but still European system of the knowledge. This is the more or less the civilization approach of the Huntington or the other scholars beyond it. That's been, I mean, seriously discussed, and I believe it's very much forgot about it in the science and international science. But still, it's still there, because that, you know what I mean. But when it comes to it's still very difficult right now to use it in the current system of knowledge. It's very much archaic. But still, it's paradoxically, when they are in these readings or the new learned book about this Russia state civilization, they are paradoxically they are referring mostly not to the Dugin, but to Huntington, because this is they wouldn't like to do so, but they ought to in this certain way. Yeah, and denunciation. Yeah, that is one of the texts I wrote. Probably this was called exactly the expertise as a kind of the denunciation, but that is that's interesting because as Vinogradov did in this case Sinevsky Daniel, when the expert crossed the limits of the questions asked by the prosecutor office, that's I consider it as the denunciation, because sometimes that is the very common feature. When the expert asked by the prosecutor office, whether you see the elements of the, let's say, hate in this text, that's fine. But when and the expert delivered, okay, so I can see here and there. But sometimes the expert, which is against the law, the expert shouldn't respond to the question that never been asked. But expert, they added, I can see here also, you know, the serious violation of the, let's say, state sovereignty. And that is clearly denunciation. So that I can see it in the numerous cases of the expertise, when the expert clearly crossed the line or exhausted the realm of the questions to him or to her, and the providing or proposing to the prosecutor office another extension for the accusation. So this is the, let's say, hermeneutic of the denunciation, if you want. They proposing something new to which could be, not necessarily, but could be converted in new accusation. Sometimes it's happened.
Well, maybe. Oh, okay.
Hello, I'm Friedrich Herklo from, studying in the Tampere Peace Research Institute now. And I wanted to ask if you think this, what you call native science, and producing very, I don't know, different results could be like a carryover from understanding of science in Soviet times, because, this was more based on like, on a dialectical materialist, or like, what they would call, I don't know, communist science.
Thank you very much. That is another difference between the current situation in Russian science and higher education and Soviet. Because Soviet education had the more or less coherent system of the control and ideological tension. Because every step should be filtered or verified and controlled by the Communist Party, by the ideology, by the chair of the Marxism-Leninism, or for example, there's a mandatory exam for the Marxism-Leninism for all candidates, so all PhD candidates. While right now, there's native science, they are more or less working, I would call it, let's say, ideological outsourcing. They are producing their different ideological products, and they're competing who will buy this. I mean, the presidential administration, they're working as a buyer on this. This is as an authoritarian marketplace of ideas, if you want. They're producing the different ideological product, like, by the way, in a different story, like a youth organization, when they created numerous youth organizations and then propose it to the supported for the presidential administration. The same story here. So this is why they don't have the very strong and channeled system of control and production of this narrative. Rather, they encourage to produce this narrative, and then they select, oh, that's maybe this part will be good, that's not coming, but another this will be good. They try to combine it, assemble this ideological product from the different heterogeneous production they could oversee. So that's how I can see this new system of knowledge from the native science.
Okay, actually, before we run out of time, I would like to use my right to ask questions, and this is because I have been also collaborating with Russian scholars for now something like 20 decades, and seeing the changes in the community, and actually I find it quite tragical. And I remember some colleagues with whom I collaborated 10 years ago, every now and then, and they seemed quite reasonable. But because of the pressure, either they have kept silent, or actually when there was discussion about money that can be received from these kind of expertise, actually I think that even those who work in the universities, they can have a small firm or something like that, so they can get money through those companies. So I actually also seen some of my colleagues who are afraid for their job, or because they just needed money to succumb to this temptation and be engaged in this kind of writing this kind of expertise. I was thinking about Soviet times. I mean, there were these departments of scientific atheism, and then suddenly they became departments of study of religion. But I'm not sure, this is my question, because of course neither one of us were then at the university, but to me it seems that even then the change was not so tragic or bitter as it is now. So my question to you is, how do you see, for example, some conferences of the study of religion in Russia let's imagine that the regime would change suddenly. So how long would it take, or will it take, that these wounds will be healed, or there will be some kind of community again?
Yeah, thank you. This is another, my old trying to observe what's going on with religious studies, because there's since the beginning that was the problem with this. Was recently very nice publication when the people tried to trace the bios of the different fellows from the Moscow State University chair of scientific atheism, and it was interesting. They moved in different direction. Sometimes they consistently moved against, they were and they still are aggressive atheists, like they were in the Soviet time. Some have been converted into the, let's say, religious scholars, and some have been converted into theologists. Though exactly those people who, some of this was fantastic. The exact, that was, I know the several names when the people who published in the 60s, you know, the dangerous sects, how we could protect our kids. They 50 years later become the publication of the how we should involve our kids into the proper moral and religion. That's the same people. And this is interesting. Well, in my general concern and my general belief, what had never had happened is the real analysis and real reassessment of the Soviet past in the post-Soviet Russian social science and humanities. Somehow this belief, okay, so it's all this Marxism-Leninism disappeared, and we will live happily ever. But I believe that was the serious mistake. The lack of the reconsideration, lack of analysis and critics to the past. They currently, well, I believe that is the converted into the current crisis, because that's quite visible how this, you know, native science, based on the idea, oh, we were there. I mean, nobody accepted us. Well, there's nobody in Europe interested in our, you know, alleged, you know, achievements, and therefore we probably should concentrate, and we will live within the, let's say, new wall we have been created from within. And okay, so we're not questioning just if you're interested. The last publication of the academic freedom we made is with Laboratorium, is the journal of the and we co-edited with the leader. It looks about academic freedom in Russia, and this is the volume we have here, just for those who are interested.
Okay, last chance to give present a question to Professor Dubrovsky. Yes, Igor, please.
Thank you for giving me a chance. So, speaking about religious Schmexperts, I was thinking of many examples when the experts used comparisons of whatever they're providing Schmexperts on with the Orthodox Christian standard, be it a Bible or morals or theology or whatever. To what extent the church is involved in that process, if at all? Thank you.
Thank you. That's with the religious expertise, it happened very strange transformation. For some reason, the Russian courts and Russian system decided not to address the religious scholars at all. I mean, this is, you know, all these people, they're very sophisticated and they have these, you know, uncertain results, and the better is just ignore them. And just already for the 10 or 15 years is the very visible tendency to avoid the religious scholar from the discussion about the religious text as an extremist, potential extremist. What they're doing, they're addressing to the linguist and psychologist, and then they responded, oh, we have already linguists and psychologists, they already established this extremist. We don't need religious scholars at all. So they are ignoring the specificity of religious text, as well as they're ignoring specificity of the artist text, the literary text. They're not interested. That's interesting pragmatic. They believe that all the texts are the same. All the texts are political. And therefore, we should analyze them as such. If you say something in the theater play, or you say something in the pray, or you say something in the religious text, that's absolutely equal. This is the political statement, and we should address them as such. And so this is why they are ignoring religious scholars at all. The role of religious expertise disappeared, while the linguistic and psychology become more or less general.
Okay, so if there is no more question, let's thank one more time Professor Dubrovsky. And continue the discussions in the coffee break.
Да. Ну, собственно, наша со Штериным статья, ты же ее читал, конечно. Thank you.